Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If you are looking for truth, you have come to the right place. This is Project Truth Beam, and I'm Scott Will. This video is going to be on discussing whether or not Jesus was a carpenter. I know a lot of people out there have been taught this, and we're going to explore, does the Bible really say Jesus was a carpenter, and what that actually looked like historically? So if you haven't joined Project Truth Beam by now, make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave comments below. We love all of our comments out there. So, I actually had a friend of mine who went into the carpentry business because he read that Jesus was a carpenter. He wanted to build houses and he wanted to learn all about carpentry just because he wanted to understand what it was like to work a job that Jesus also worked. But does the Bible really say that? Well, some of our translations out there does say carpenter, but when we actually dig into the Greek, it doesn't really say that. And historically speaking, it doesn't really match. The word there is the Greek word tekton. Tekton did not build things like this, chairs and tables. That was not what a tekton did. A tekton is a person who works with his hands and he works with stones. He is a stonemason or a stonesmith. They would work at some sort of industrial place where you would be chiseling stones, but you might be also stacking stones, collecting stones, moving stones, building houses. This picture in front of you is typically, on the one on the left, is what the houses and frames of the houses look like. You would stack up stones. Most of the time it would be without mortar, sometimes with mortar. And you would build walls the same fashion. This picture in the bottom right is the inside of a house from the first century in the time of Jesus. They would have a wooden ceiling. It didn't rain very much, so you didn't need a whole lot going on for the as far as roof, but sometimes people would spend their days up on their roof and it'd be cooler. And on the inside, it would just be stones, stacked stones. And if you were wealthy, you were able to get some plaster and they would put plaster over it. And I'm pretty sure that those tactons would also probably put up that plaster, but they were specialized in working with stones. So he was not making wooden chairs and wooden tables. It doesn't make sense because in the land of Israel, there isn't a lot of trees. There might be some olive trees, there might be some acacia trees, and those are pretty small. You might have some fruit trees, but not many. And in the northern land of Israel, you'll have more trees, but they didn't use those trees all that often for wood. They like to keep the trees for shade and some of the cedar trees they would use. But the Roman Empire usually went through areas and just decimated trees. And this happened in the land of Israel. They really decimated a lot of trees. The tree population um, really went down anytime the Roman military went through. So there really wasn't a whole lot of building with trees. There was a lot of building with stone and you know the temple, any ancient pictures of ancient Israel, they're all living in stone houses because stones are everywhere. I mean, the earth is just gushing out stones in the land of Israel. So that is what a tecton is, and here is some of the other things that the tectons would be working with and using. They would be making things like bowls and cups. And you can see some of the chisel marks on the cups. They would be making water pouring pots, and they would be making olive oil press, and they might use these for vineyards, but a lot of times they would stomp the vineyards. They would stomp on the grapes. But you could use these for making bread. These are very common things that would be made out of stones, and some of them became popular because of ritual purity and people concerned about becoming unpure. Maybe there's somebody in the house that deals with a lot of dead animals, and he would use the stone pottery. But it was very popular instead of clay pots. And it would be more expensive as well, but everybody was working. Everybody had to have some sort of stone eatery. And it's just so interesting because some archaeologists they were trying to build a rail station or a rail line, and they uncovered a manufacturing plant of stone bowls and pots and cups. And this particular place is located just right near the real Nazareth, the small village, not the touristy Nazareth, but the actual Nazareth. And so the people that would have been working at this site would be the people from the area. And this is all from the 1st century. So there is pretty good odds that Jesus might have worked at this Tekton manufacturing place. It says that his father did it and all of his brothers did it. And that would make sense that he would be working here or perhaps in another location doing similar work. And I just think that's so amazing because you have Jesus, instead of building chairs, he is probably this very muscular guy with awesome core strength and great hand strength. And he's probably pretty muscular because he's working with stones and lifting stones and carrying stones. You're going to have some build. So he's not this scrawny Messiah. He's this actually pretty muscular Messiah. And I just think the direction of having him a stone worker makes a lot more sense biblically than Carpenter, who just makes chairs and tables and stuff like that. And the reason why I think that is because in the Bible, Jesus is described as a stone. He's one place he's described the stone which the builders rejected. He's also described as the cornerstone, the stone of stumbling, the rock of offense, the choice stone, a spiritual rock, a living stone, and of course, he calls himself living water. And how is that connected to a stone? Well, if you remember the split rock out in the desert, and the ancient Israelites were begging for water, and Moses struck the rock, and water poured out. That description is living water poured out. And so Jesus is that rock. The Bible is saying he is that rock that living water flows out of and saved all those people. And so Jesus is the rock that has the living water that will save all of us. And so that is the message here, that Jesus was not a carpenter by the sense of making wood chairs or tables. He was actually a stone worker. And so I hope you've enjoyed this teaching. If you could pass this along to other people, we would greatly appreciate that here at Project Truth Beam. Thank you for joining us, and God bless to everyone out there.